The bathroom door was half open. He didn't mean to look. He looked anyway. Listen, K-fam. The most feared man in Koreatown. The one nobody dares to interrupt mid-sentence. The one with the black dragon climbing the side of his neck. That man walks into his own mansion on a quiet Saturday afternoon, sees the new black nanny wrapped in a towel by the guest suite mirror, and forgets how to speak. Ayu, the silent hand, speechless. I swear on my life, her name is Nanny Hodges, 25, black, beautiful, slender build, honey skin, long twist of blonde and black hair down her back. She was hired to take care of a 6-year-old boy who hadn't spoken in 4 months. She walked into that Bel Air marble palace with 2 bags and a cotton apron, and made the boy laugh in a single afternoon. His name is Kang Tae-hwan, 38, black suit, black gloves, black tie buttoned to the throat, second-generation boss of the Kang clan, fronting as a port logistics empire down in Long Beach. Married, cold marriage. Separate bedrooms for 5 years. A wife who already had divorce papers locked in the safe 4 months before Lonnie ever heard the name Kang. And then a Saturday. A cancelled meeting, a door left ajar. Omo, he looked. And he forgot every language he knew. But what she said next, standing there in that small wet towel, looking at him through the mirror. That's the line that broke him. That's where it all begins. Mark my words, K-fam. Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching us from right now. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you never miss a single one of our Korean mafia stories. If you like dramas about justice, hidden love, and family secrets in the underworld of Koreatown, this video was made for you. Stay with us until the end. Because the truth behind this nanny and this boss is not what you think. The little boy hadn't spoken a full sentence in 4 months, and on the morning Nanny Hodges walked through the iron gate of the Kang mansion in Bel Air, nobody told her that. Nobody warned her that the 6-year-old waiting at the top of the marble staircase had stopped crying the way other children stop biting their nails. Nobody told her that the silence in that house had a weight you could feel pressing on your chest the second front door closed behind you. They just handed her a uniform, a set of keys to the service wing, and a single sentence from the head housekeeper. Take care of June. That was it. Take care of June. Lonnie stood in the entrance hall with her 2 bags at her feet and let her eyes climb the marble. 25 years old, long twist of blonde and black hair falling past her shoulders, honey skin under the cold morning light, beige tailored pants, white linen shirt with mother-of-pearl buttons rolled to the 3/4 sleeve, flat white sneakers. Raw cotton apron folded over her arm, a thin, gray fabric ribbon knotted on her left wrist. The faint scent of vanilla and bergamot felt almost rude in a house that smelled like nothing at all. Mrs. Helena Park came down to meet her. Korean-American 58, gray hair cut in a short bowl, rectangular silver glasses, black dress to the knee, white lace collar, white apron pressed flat. The kind of face that had smiled a lot once and had learned to stop. She looked Lonnie up and down. Professional, no welcome. You're the nanny. Yes, ma'am, Nanny Hodges. Mrs. Park, follow me. She just turned and started walking, and Lonnie picked up her bags and followed, and the marble swallowed the sound of their shoes. The house unfolded as they walked. Cream sofas nobody sat on, a black lacquered table set for 12, a library with books in Korean, a golden lamp burning in the middle of the day. A kitchen the size of an apartment, white marble and brushed steel, a center island so long you could lay a grown man on it, cold light everywhere. The silence was the loudest thing in the building. Mr. Kang is at the port, Mrs. Park said without turning. Mrs. Kang is on a call. Madam Kang Hai-jin is in her wing and will not be disturbed unless she rings. You will not enter the east corridor. You will not enter Mr. Kang's office. You will not photograph anything. You will not speak to anyone outside about anything you see or hear. Your contract has 32 pages. I assume you read them. I read them, ma'am. Good. She stopped at the foot of a second staircase, narrower, the one the staff used. The boy is upstairs. He will be in the breakfast room. He has not eaten. Since when, ma'am? For the first time, Mrs. Park turned her head. Her glasses caught the light, and behind them, her eyes were tired in a way that had nothing to do with the morning. Since yesterday lunch. Lonnie just nodded, set her bags down, untied the apron from her arm, and tied it around her waist with 2 firm pulls. Mrs. Park watched her do it. Miss Hodges. Ma'am. The older woman glanced once at the closed door at the far end of the corridor, then back at Lonnie, and lowered her voice until it was almost a breath. He doesn't cry anymore. Then she turned and walked away, her flat black shoes silent on the marble. Lonnie stood there with her hand still on the knot of her apron. She breathed in, vanilla and bergamot. She breathed out. Then she climbed the stairs. The breakfast room had a round table of pale wood, 3 chairs, 1 booster seat. Beyond the wide window, a hedge so perfectly trimmed it looked drawn with a ruler. On the table sat a small white bowl of rice porridge, a plate of cut fruit, a tiny silver spoon. None of it had been touched. The porridge had a thin skin forming on the surface, and in the booster seat sat the boy, June Kang, 6 years old, thin, round face that should have been full of bread and laughter, black hair cut in a straight bowl with a flat fringe, big black eyes turned down at the corner, a small gap in the front of his mouth, navy polo buttoned to the top, beige twill pants, small white sneakers with the laces tied in identical bows, shoulders sloped forward, hands folded in his lap. He was looking at a spot on the wood, about 6 inches in front of the bowl, the way you stare at something when you have been trained, very quietly, that wanting things gets you nowhere. Lonnie stopped in the doorway and just looked at him for a long beat. Then she walked in, not toward him, not toward the table. She walked the long way around the room, past the window, past the credenza, past the corner, where a wooden basket of toys sat untouched, with the price tags still hanging off 2 of them. She crouched down by the basket. She didn't speak. She picked the basket up by its handles, carried it across the rug, and set it on the floor about 3 feet from his chair. Then she sat down on the rug beside it, cross-legged, the raw cotton of her apron pooling in her lap, and she started pulling out the Montessori blocks 1 by 1 and lining them up on the wood floor in front of her. Big square, smaller square, triangle, cylinder, long rectangle, small rectangle. She handled each piece slowly, deliberately, like she was alone in the room. She didn't look up at him. She didn't sing to him. She didn't make her voice high or sweet. She just lined the blocks up the way she would if she were preparing them for herself. And then she picked up the biggest square, set it down in front of her, picked up a slightly smaller one, and stacked it on top. The clock on the wall ticked. The porridge sat. The boy did not move. She built a tower, 3 blocks high. She added a 4th. She knocked it over gently with the back of her hand and started again. She did this 6 times. After the 7th tower, the boy shifted his weight forward in the booster, then back, then forward again. She did not look up. She started a new shape, lower this time, wider, like the foundation of a small house. After the 9th tower, the boy slid down off the booster seat without a sound. He walked over. He stopped about 2 feet from her shoulder. She still did not look up. She set a cylinder upright in the center of the foundation. A small hand reached past her arm and picked up a triangle. He held the triangle for a moment in his small fist, the gap in his front teeth showing as his mouth opened in concentration. Then he leaned down and set the triangle very carefully on top of the cylinder. It balanced. Lonnie let out a breath so slow it didn't move the air. "Bonita," she said very low. "Pretty." The boy did not look at her face, but he reached for another block. He set it beside the triangle, balanced it on the cylinder's rim. It held. She slid another piece across the floor without comment. He took it. He placed it. 20 minutes passed without a single full sentence between them. The clock ticked. And block by block, on the floor of a room built for breakfast, the boy who had stopped crying built something that didn't have a name yet. When the structure was finally too tall to add to without tipping, he sat back on his heels and looked at it. Then for the first time, his eyes moved up and slid sideways and found her face. They were enormous. They were tired in a way no 6-year-old's eyes should be tired. They asked a question with no words attached. Lonnie did not look away. "You built that," she said. Not babby talk, not a coup. Just a statement, the way you would say it to anyone whose work you respected. He looked at the tower again. He looked at her again. Then very slowly, without smiling, he nodded once. She nodded back. Same speed, same weight. "June, you hungry?" He didn't answer. But he didn't shake his head either, which in this house, she would learn later, was the closest thing to yes that you got. She stood up slow, walked to the table, picked up the cold porridge. She carried it down to the kitchen, set it on the marble island, and made him a fresh bowl from scratch. Warm, salt, a drop of sesame oil, a piece of dried seaweed cut into a small star. She carried it back up. She did not sit across from him. She sat on the floor next to his chair, with her back against the table leg, close enough that he could see the top of her head if he leaned forward, far enough that he didn't have to. He ate 4 spoonfuls. Then he stopped. He looked at the long twist of blonde and black hair, falling over her shoulder onto the floor near him. He reached out and touched the very end of it with one finger, the way you touch something to make sure it's real. Then he picked the spoon back up and ate 4 more. Lonnie sat very still and did not let her face do anything at all. Children don't only need silence, she thought. They need presence. She had no idea that, at that exact moment, the front gate had opened for a black car coming back from Long Beach 3 hours earlier than expected. She had no idea that the silence she had just cracked open with a tower of wooden blocks was the silence he had personally installed in every room of this house. She just knew the boy was eating, so she sat. The service corridor was the only part of the house Kong Tae-won never used during the day. The staff used it. He used the main hall. That was the order of the house, and he had built it. 38 years old, shoulders that filled a doorway without trying, black hair cut close to the scalp, clean fade on the sides, angular face, hard jaw, black eyes that absorbed light instead of reflecting it. A thin vertical scar at the left corner of his mouth. On the right side of his neck, climbing from his collar up behind his ear, the head of a black dragon in solid ink, body coiling down into the white shirt under the pinstriped black suit. Buttoned to the last button, black silk tie, black leather gloves he was pulling off as he walked, square white gold watch, polished Oxfords clicking on the service tile because he had taken the wrong turn at the back door, distracted, thinking about a name that had come up at the port and shouldn't have. He stopped walking. The corridor opened on the left into the kitchen. The kitchen opened on the right, through a wide archway, into the breakfast room. And from where he had stopped, halfway down the corridor, he could see straight across the marble of the kitchen floor, through the archway, into the breakfast room. He could see the long pale wood table. He could see the booster seat pushed back from it. He could see his son's small white sneakers on the rug, and he could see, sitting on the marble of his own kitchen floor with her bare feet tucked under her and her sneakers kicked off neatly by the leg of the island, a woman he had never seen before in his life, holding his son in her lap. The boy was laughing. It was not a loud laugh. It was a small one, almost shy, the kind that comes out of a child who has forgotten the sound his own laugh makes, and is surprised to find it still works. He was sitting sideways across her thighs, one of his small hands fisted in the long twist of blonde and black hair that fell over her shoulder, and he was laughing because she had just taken the dried seaweed star and pressed it gently to the tip of his nose like a sticker, and it had stuck there for a second before fluttering down into the empty bowl. Tae-hwan did not move. He had been a man who walked into rooms for 20 years. He had walked into rooms where men he had grown up with were waiting to decide if they were still on his side. He had walked into a room 6 years ago and watched his wife hand him a newborn and felt nothing move in his chest. He walked into rooms. That was what he did. He did not walk into this one. He stood in the shadow of the service corridor with his right glove halfway off his hand and watched his son laugh. He watched her bend down and say something into the top of June's hair, too low to hear, and he watched June nod, the small, serious nod of a boy who has been listened to. He watched her thumb brush a grain of rice off the corner of the boy's mouth without making a thing of it, and then she looked up. She didn't startle. She just lifted her head, calm, like she had felt the air change and wanted to know who was responsible. And her eyes found him in the dim of the service corridor and held there. No fear, no apology. Just a quiet assessment, the kind a person does when they're deciding whether a stranger in a doorway is a problem they need to stand up for or not. He had been told 3 weeks earlier, in a 4-line email from his wife's assistant, that a new nanny had been hired. He had not read the file. He had signed the contract and handed the folder back to Min-jae. He had assumed there would be another middle-aged Korean woman in a black dress and white apron, whose face he would never need to learn. He looked at her bare foot on the marble of his kitchen. He looked at his son's small hand in her hair. He looked at her face. He did not say hello. He did not nod. He pulled the second glove off his hand, folded both of them into his left palm in one motion, turned on the heel of his Oxford, and walked back down the service corridor the way he had come. The sound of his footsteps did not change speed. It did not slow down. It did not speed up. It went away, even, controlled until the door at the far end clicked shut behind him. In the kitchen, Lonnie Hodges sat very still on the marble with the boy in her lap and listened to the silence of the house close, back over itself like water over a stone. "June," she said softly after a long moment. "Quemera?" The boy turned his face up to her. The gap in his front teeth showed. He did not answer in words. He just leaned his small head against the warm of her collarbone and closed his eyes, and his small hand stayed fisted in her hair, like he was anchoring himself to something that wasn't going to disappear. She rested her chin lightly on the top of his head. She did not know yet that the man who had just walked away from his own kitchen without speaking had not failed to speak to a stranger in his house in 15 years. She did not know yet that by midnight he was going to send for her. She just held the boy. Upstairs, behind the closed door of an office she had been told never to enter, Kang Tae-hwan stood at the window with his 2 black gloves in his left hand and his right hand flat against the cold glass, and he tried, for the first time in a very long time, to remember what he had been thinking about before he turned the wrong corner. He could not remember. Night came down over Bel Air in layers. Lonnie put June to bed at 8:30. She read him 3 pages of a Korean picture book, sounding the syllables out slowly, and he did not correct her pronunciation, but he did not look away from her mouth either. She tucked the blanket up under his chin. She turned off the lamp. She left the door cracked an inch and walked down the back stairs to ask Mrs. Park what time she should be ready in the morning. Mrs. Park was waiting for her at the bottom of the stairs. "Mr. Kang would like to see you." Lonnie's hand stopped on the banister. Now, 2nd floor, end of the east corridor. The door is open. A pause. The glasses caught the light. "Miss Hodges." "Ma'am." "Answer his questions. Do not ask any of your own." Lonnie nodded once. She let go of the banister. She walked back up the stairs she had just come down, and at the top she turned right instead of left, into the corridor she had been told 12 hours earlier never to enter, and her flat white sneakers were silent on the runner, and her heart was making the same sound it had made that morning, and she breathed in through her nose, slow, vanilla, and bergamot, and she breathed out. The door at the end of the corridor stood open exactly 6 inches. Light spilled through the gap in a single warm yellow line across the dark wood of the floor. She stopped just outside it. She did not knock. She had a feeling, the kind of feeling you don't argue with, that the man on the other side of that door already knew she was standing there. "Come in, Miss Hodges." His voice was lower than she had expected, quieter, the kind of voice that did not need to raise itself, because it had spent 20 years discovering that it didn't have to. She pushed the door open and walked in. The office was long and narrow, one wall all books, one wall all window, a heavy black desk at the far end with a single green-shaded banker's lamp burning on it. He was standing behind the desk. The suit jacket was off, white shirt still buttoned to the last button, black silk tie still knotted tight, but the gloves were off his hands and the watch was lying on the desk beside an untouched tumbler of amber. The dragon on his neck was clearly visible above the collar in the lamplight. He looked at her for a long second without speaking. She stopped 3 steps inside the door and put her hands lightly behind her back the way she had been taught in her first job at 16 in a hotel in Long Beach. She did not look at the floor. She looked at him. "You aren't afraid of me?" The question was so direct, and his English was so clean, and the lamplight was so warm on the side of his face, that she almost smiled. She didn't, but she almost did. "No, sir." Why not? She thought about it. She did not rush to answer. The clock on the bookshelf behind him ticked twice. "Tenho mais medo de gente que sorri falso," she said. Then, because his eyebrow lifted just barely a millimeter on the left side, she translated, "I'm more afraid of people who smile fake. You haven't smiled at me yet. So I don't know what your face is going to do when it lies. That's the part that scares me, sir. Not you." The silence in the office was different from the silence in the rest of the house. It was a silence that was listening. He looked down at the desk. He picked up the tumbler. He did not drink from it. He set it back down. The corner of his mouth, the one with the thin vertical scar at the edge, moved exactly once, the smallest possible movement, the ghost of something that might have been a smile in a different life. He caught it before it became one. "Miss Hodges, sir. My son ate today." "Yes, sir. He has not eaten a full meal in 4 months." She did not say anything. "Tomorrow morning," he said, "you will be in this house at 6. You will wake my son at 7. You will stay with him until he sleeps. You will not enter this office again unless I send for you. You will not speak to my mother unless she speaks to you first. You will not speak to anyone outside this house about my son or about me. Are we understood? Good night, Miss Hodges." She turned to go. "Lonnie." She stopped at the door. She did not turn around. She waited. "Thank you." It was almost not a word. It was almost just breath. But the warm yellow line of light across the dark wood of the floor caught it and held it, and Lonnie Hodges, 25 years old, twist of blonde and black falling over one shoulder, thin gray ribbon on her left wrist, stood in the doorway of an office she had been told never to enter and let 2 seconds pass before she answered. "Good night, sir." She closed the door behind her. Lonnie walked back to her small room in the staff wing and sat on the edge of the bed in the dark for a long time before she turned on the light. Mark my words, the man in that office had not thanked anyone in this house in 8 years, and he was already starting to wonder, downstairs at his desk with the untouched whiskey going warm in front of him, why the only thing he could see when he closed his eyes was a bare brown foot tucked under a raw cotton apron on the marble of his own kitchen floor. He didn't sleep that night. Neither did she. He didn't sleep that night. Neither did she. But the house had its own clock, and the clock did not care who slept. By 6 the gardeners were already trimming the hedge under the breakfast window. By 6:30, Mrs. Park was running steam through the linens. By 7, Lonnie was downstairs in her uniform, hair pulled into a low twist over her shoulder, sneakers laced tight, apron knotted clean at the waist. By 8, June was in the breakfast room, eating half a bowl of porridge with a slice of pear, cut into a tiny crown. By 9, Taejuan had already left for the port, and Yuna was in the gym wing on a video call about a benefit gala. The week that followed was made of small things. June stacking blocks higher, June naming colors in Korean and then in English, June asking, in a tiny dry voice, if the moon was a girl or a boy. Lonnie saying she didn't know, and then sitting with him while he decided. Helena Park bringing a second cup of tea to the breakfast room one morning and setting it down in front of Lonnie without saying anything, and walking back out before Lonnie could thank her. Taejuan every now and then in a doorway, always for a second, always gone before she could meet his eyes for too long. By Friday night, Lonnie thought she understood the shape of the house. Yuna and June left Saturday morning for a children's foundation luncheon in Beverly Hills. A car, a driver, a small navy suit for June, pearls for Yuna. Helena Park took the staff downstairs to deep clean the wine cellar. The east wing was sealed. Madame Haijin was at a temple retreat in Malibu and would not be back until Sunday. Taehwan had a meeting at the port that was scheduled to last the entire afternoon. The mansion, for the first time in 7 days, was effectively empty. Lonnie went up to the guest suite on the second floor at the end of the west corridor. It was where the staff was allowed to wash on long shifts. A wide-tiled bathroom with a deep tub, a separate glass-walled shower, white towels folded in a column on a low wooden bench. She closed the door. She did not lock it because Mrs. Park had told her on day 2 that staff did not lock doors in the Kang house, that locks were for owners. She undressed slowly. She left the uniform folded on the bench, the gray ribbons still knotted on her wrist. She turned the water on hot and stepped under it and let the week melt off her shoulders. She washed her hair with a small bottle of shampoo she'd brought from her own bag. She let the steam climb the glass. She thought about June, about the way he had laughed for the first time on Wednesday when she pretended a wooden giraffe couldn't reach the top of the block tower, and how Yuna had stopped in the doorway, watched for 3 seconds, and walked away with her phone pressed to her ear. She thought about Taehwan in the office 2 nights before, the way he had asked, "Are you not afraid of me?" with the same flat voice he used to order, coffee. She thought about how he had almost smiled, almost. The water ran over her face and she closed her eyes. She didn't hear the gate. She didn't hear the car. She didn't hear the front door. Because the front door of the Kang mansion was carved oak, 2 inches thick, and it did not. Slam, it sealed. She didn't hear his shoes on the marble of the staircase, because his shoes were always polished Oxfords with a soft sole, and the man inside them moved like he had been taught to move by someone who hated noise. She didn't hear him in the corridor. The meeting at the port had been canceled. A container from Busan had been delayed by a customs inspection. Nobody had warned him about, and the meeting had folded before it began. Taehwan had driven back at 11:30 in the morning. He had given the driver the rest of the day off. He had climbed the staircase, loosening his black silk tie with one hand, the other already pulling the cufflink out of his right wrist. He had been thinking, if he had been thinking about anything, that he wanted to change out of the suit and sit in the library and stare at a wall for 1 hour without anyone interrupting him. The guest suite door was not closed all the way. He saw the line of light first, steam, soft and gold, drifting out into the corridor in a slow ribbon. He stopped. He should have stepped back. The house was supposed to be empty. He took 1 step forward instead, half thinking it was a maid who had left a faucet running, half thinking nothing at all. He pushed the door, just barely, with the back of 2 fingers, 2 inches. 3. The bathroom door inside the suite was wide open. The shower had stopped, and Lonnie was standing on the bath mat with 1 small white towel wrapped tight under her arms, water still beating on her shoulders, on her collarbone, on the hollow of her throat. Her honey skin was flushed pink from the heat. Her hair was loose and wet down her back, the twist undone, blonde and black in dark ropes against the brown of her shoulders. She was reaching for a second towel on the bench, and she froze with her hand still in the air, because she had seen him. She had seen him in the long mirror over the sink, reflected through the open doorway. Standing in the suite, one hand on the door he had just pushed. His black tie pulled loose from his collar, the top 2 buttons of his white shirt already undone, the dragon tattoo on the right side of his neck visible now, black ink coiling up from the collarbone, scales fine, head turned in toward his throat. His face was the face of a man who had walked into a room expecting silence and had been hit, instead, with something that took every word he owned and emptied it onto the floor. He didn't speak. He didn't move. His mouth was slightly open, and the breath that should have made a word didn't make one. The silent hand of Koreatown, the man who could end a negotiation in 3 syllables in 2 languages, was standing in a doorway in his own house with no syllable at all. Lonnie didn't scream. Lonnie didn't drop the towel. Lonnie's hand came down slowly from the bench and pressed the white cotton tighter under her arms, and the water kept beating on her shoulder, and she turned her head. Just enough to look at him directly through the open door and not through the mirror. "You always come in without a sound?" His jaw moved. No word came. She held the towel. She didn't cover anything she wasn't already covering. She didn't grab the second towel off the bench. She didn't run. Her chin came up half an inch. "Mr. Kang, that worked. The name worked the way a slap works." He blinked. His hand came off the door. He took 1 step back into the suite. His eyes finally moved, dropped to the floor, came back up to a spot just above her shoulder, then slid the rest of the way off her body and onto the wall. "I'm sorry." His voice was lower than she had ever heard it. It scraped. "This is my house, and I work in it." Her voice did not shake. "That does not make every room yours." There was a beat, a long one. The steam moved between them slowly. Somewhere downstairs, a clock chimed 12. He did not look back at her. He kept his eyes on the wall to the left of her head, and his hand came up and gripped the doorframe once, hard, the knuckles going pale through the brown of his glove. Because he had not even taken the gloves off when he came up the stairs. "You are right." That was all he said. He stepped back fully into the suite. He pulled the bathroom door closed slowly with 2 fingers, the same 2 fingers that had pushed it open, and the latch caught with a soft click. Then she heard him cross the suite. She heard the outer door of the suite open and close. She heard his footsteps go down the corridor. Not the way he had come up, slower, and the marble took the sound. She stood there on the bath mat in the closed bathroom for a long time. Water still beating on her shoulder. Her hand still pressed flat against the cotton over her chest. The flush on her cheeks had nothing to do with the shower anymore. She breathed out, just once. Then she reached for the second towel and dried her hair. When she came down at 1, the mansion was empty again. Taewon's car was gone. He had not gone to the library. He had not changed out of his suit. He had gotten back in the car and driven, and nobody asked her where, because she did not ask anybody anything. She went up to the breakfast room and sat by the wide window and folded the small white towel from June's bath bag into a neat square and waited for the car to bring her boy home. The next morning at 6, Taewon was already at the port. 5 days. 5 days he did not look at her. 5 days he walked past where she was in and his head did not turn. 5 days the corridor between his office and the library was crossed only when he knew she was upstairs with June. 5 days he did not eat breakfast in the breakfast room. 5 days he ate in the small dining room off the kitchen, alone with the door shut, and Helena Park brought him toast and black coffee, and he did not say thank you, because he had not said much of anything at all. The staff noticed. Helena noticed. Minjae, when he came by on Monday with a leather folder of doc invoices, noticed and said nothing. Lonnie noticed too. Of course she noticed. She was working in a house with 3 corridors, and she had not crossed paths with the man who owned it once in 5 days, and that was not coincidence, that was choreography. Some part of her was grateful at first. Some part of her, by Tuesday, was annoyed. By Wednesday, the annoyance had moved into her shoulders and stayed there. She had not done anything. She had been standing in a bathroom on her own time, on her own day off, in her own staff suite, and a man had walked into a doorway and lost his words, and somehow she was the one being avoided. She fed June. She walked June to the koi pond. She taught June the English word for cinnamon. She kept the gray ribbon knotted on her wrist. And every time she heard Oxford shoes on the marble of the far corridor, the muscle in her jaw set a little harder. Friday night, the house was loud, only in the way a Korean house gets loud, which is not loud at all. Yuna had taken June to a Korean cinema night at a friend's home in Hancock Park. They would be back after 10. Helena had a half day off and had gone to see her sister in Glendale. Madame Haijin was at a private dinner with 3 matriarchs from old shipping families. The staff was down to a skeleton, 2 girls in the laundry wing, the night driver in his quarters. Taehwan was in the library. Lonnie saw the line of light under the library door at 9:15 on her way back from the kitchen, with a glass of water for the nightstand. She stopped in the corridor. She looked at the line of light. The water was cold in her hand. She thought, for a second, about going up the stairs and going to bed and minding the careful, quiet rule of a house she did not own. Then she thought about June, and about the way Taehwan had almost smiled in the office that first week, and about how a grown man with a coiled black dragon on his neck was hiding from a woman in his own house for 5 days because he had seen her shoulder. She walked to the library door. She knocked once with the knuckle of her free hand. She did not wait for an answer. She turned the handle and went in. The library was dim and warm. The golden lamp was on, the aperture with the cream silk shade casting its yellow circle over the low leather chair and the side table. A heavy crystal glass sat on the table with 2 fingers of amber whiskey and 1 cube of ice that had not melted yet. Taehwan was in the chair. Black trousers, white shirt with the cuffs rolled twice, no tie, no gloves, the collar open enough that the lowest curve of the dragon's tail showed at the base of his throat. A book in his lap that he was not reading. He looked up when she came in and his face did not change, but his fingers closed on the page. She closed the door behind her with her shoulder because her hands were full. She set the glass of water down on the small wooden side table near the door. Then she walked across the rug toward him and stopped about 4 feet from the chair. "Are you going to pretend you didn't see me?" He looked at her steadily. He let the book close on his finger. "I saw you and lost your voice." "You weren't the problem. Then what was?" He looked at the whiskey. He didn't pick it up. The ice cube made a single small sound in the glass, settling. "Me wanting a life I'm not allowed to touch." She didn't expect that sentence. She didn't expect the flat quiet of it, the way it dropped into the room with no defense, no negotiation. She had walked into the library with 5 days of irritation knotted across her shoulders, and he had handed her, without a fight, the one thing she had not been ready for. The truth. She didn't move. She didn't speak for a beat. The golden lamp made a halo around the leather chair. The whiskey caught the light. She watched his face, and his face did not move. He set the book down on the table next to the glass. Slowly, and he stood up. He did not come toward her. He took 2 steps to the side, around the low chair, until he was standing in the open part of the rug, and only then did he turn to face her fully. The dragon at his collarbone moved when his throat moved. "I should not have come back early on Saturday. You live here. I shouldn't have pushed the door. No." Her voice was lower than she meant it. "You shouldn't have. I won't again." She nodded once. She did not say it was fine. It was not fine. It was a thing that had happened, and it was the kind of thing that did not unhappen. "Then why are you in a library at 9:30 at night, avoiding the staircase that goes past my room?" He almost smiled. Not quite. The corner of his mouth moved and stopped. "Because the staircase that goes past your room is the only staircase in this house." She felt the heat come up the back of her neck. She kept her face still. He took 1 step, not toward her, toward the lamp. He stopped at the edge of the rug, his hand half lifted, and the hand did not finish the gesture. It stayed in the air, palm half open, about the height of her cheek, if she had been standing closer. He looked at his own hand the way a man looks at a thing he doesn't recognize. "I have not lived in this house in a long time," he said. "I have slept in it. I have eaten in it. I have signed contracts in the office down the hall. I have not lived in it." And then a woman who is not afraid of me sat on the floor of my son's breakfast room and stacked blocks until he laughed for the first time in 4 months, and now I am 38 years old and I cannot walk past a staircase. Lonnie held her ground. Her chin came up half an inch, the same way it had on the bath mat. His hand was still in the air. Slowly, almost without deciding to, he lowered it. The knuckle of his index finger came to rest, just for a second, at the level of her cheekbone, in the empty air between them. He did not touch her. He let his hand hover there, then he closed it into a soft fist and let it drop to his side. She took one step back, just one, Mr. Kang. Taehwan. She didn't say his name, she said quietly. The way you say a thing once and never again, I will not be any man's secret. He looked at her. He nodded slowly. He did not argue. He did not promise. He did not reach for her again. He took 2 steps back around the leather chair and sat down on it the way a man sits down when his knees are tired. He picked up the crystal glass. He did not drink. He looked at the amber against the lamplight. Good night, Miss Hodges. Good night, Mr. Kang. She turned. She walked across the rug. She picked up the cold glass of water from the side table by the door, because she was not going to leave it there for Helena to find in the morning. She closed the library door behind her without a sound. She climbed the staircase in the dark. She passed the door to the east corridor. She passed the door to the master suite. She passed the door to June's room and stopped, the way she stopped every night, and listened for a second to the slow rise and fall of a 6-year-old's breath behind the wood. Then she walked the last short stretch to her own room at the end of the staff hall. She closed the door. She set the water on the nightstand. She stood there for a long minute with her hand still on the glass. Downstairs in the library, the ice cube finished melting. Taehwan did not move from the chair until the lamp clicked off on its timer at midnight. He did not finish the whiskey. He did not open the book. He sat with his hand resting flat on his own knee, the same hand that had not touched her, and he counted, very slowly, the things he had built in his life that he could no longer stand inside. Upstairs, Lonnie sat on the edge of her bed with the gray ribbon between her fingers and untied it once, smoothed it flat on her thigh, knotted it again at her wrist with 2 firm pulls. Then she lay down in her uniform with the lamp on and stared at the ceiling. In the silence between the two of them, the entire house listened. Morning came slow into the Bel Air house, the kind of slow that pretends nothing happened the night before. Lonnie sat up in the staff suite, pressed her palms flat to the cotton sheet, and breathed once all the way down. Her twist braid, blonde and black, lay heavy over her shoulder. She tied it back with the gray fabric ribbon from her wrist and stood, uniform on, beige-tailored trousers, white linen shirt buttoned to the 3rd button, sleeves rolled, cotton apron, low white sneakers. She looked at herself once in the bathroom mirror and decided not to look twice. June was waiting in the breakfast nook with a half-eaten piece of toast and a face that had already chosen a mood for the day. The mood was quiet, the kind a 6-year-old gets when he has decided he loves someone and is afraid of what that means. He scooted the 2nd chair out with his foot before she sat. Good morning, Mr. Hodges, she said, low and warm. Good morning, Miss Lonnie. He looked at her braid, then at her face. Are you tired? A little, are you? A little. She cut his apple into 8 pieces, because that was the right number for a Tuesday. Helena Park moved past the doorway with a basket of linens and gave Lonnie a look that wasn't a question and wasn't an answer, the way women who have worked in big houses look at each other when they both know the air in the room has changed. Yuna came down at 9:20, ivory meaty dress, block heels, matte red on her lips like punctuation. She stopped at the threshold and watched her son finish his apple. June looked up, said Iyama, and reached for her. Yuna walked over, kissed the top of his head, kept her hand there a beat longer than usual, and turned her eyes on Lonnie. Lonnie, when you have a moment, after June's lesson, come to the tea room on the 2nd floor. It was not a question. It was not unkind. It was the voice a woman uses when she has rehearsed the sentence 3 times in the mirror. Yes, ma'am, Lonnie said. Yuna held her eyes for one more second, and there was something in her face Lonnie had not seen before. Not anger, not warning, something tired and clean, like a window someone finally washed. The tea room on the 2nd floor was a place Lonnie had only crossed through, low tatami, paper screens, white camellia in a celadon vessel, 3 cushions around a black lacquer tray. The window looked over the back garden where the gardener was clipping boxwood into a slow rectangle. Eunice was already kneeling. The tea was already poured. Genmaika, the smell of toasted rice and grass. Sit! Lonnie sat across from her, folded her legs, placed her hands on her thighs. Yuna lifted her cup, blew across the surface, set it down without drinking. I am going to speak to you in a way I have not spoken to anyone in this house in 8 years. I am going to ask you to listen and not to lie when I am done. Can you do that? Yes, ma'am. Stop calling me ma'am. Today, in this room, my name is Yuna. Yes, Yuna. Yuna looked at the camellia. I am not blind, Lonnie. The air in the room dropped half a degree. Lonnie did not look away. She did not nod. She kept her hands where they were. I know my husband came home 5 days ago and walked the long hallway instead of the short one. I know the lamp in the library burned past 2 in the morning. I know he has not looked at my face in 4 months, and last Tuesday he could not look at yours. I know the staff have started moving differently when you cross a room. I know my son laughed at breakfast on Saturday for the first time since March. I have known all of it from the 2nd week. Yuna, let me finish. Lonnie closed her mouth. I want you to understand who I am before you decide what I am saying. I am not a wife who was loved and then betrayed. I am a woman who was put into a contract at 28 by a family who needed an alliance. The daughter of a shipping family from Busan. Tae Hwan was the son of a clan that needed clean money to move through Long Beach. We were married 11 months after a dinner with 11 people. I cried in the bathroom of the reception hall and then came out and smiled for 200 photographs. She sipped her tea, set it down. The first year we tried, he was kind, patient. The 2nd year we stopped pretending. The 3rd year we built separate routines. By the 5th year, we slept in separate rooms. That was 5 years ago, Lonnie. 5 years. Lonnie's hands had not moved. June happened in the 2nd year. He was the only true thing we ever made together. Tae Hwan loves him from a distance, with money and rules and a tutor schedule. He does not know how to sit on the floor with his own son. He has never known, until you. Lonnie opened her mouth. Yuna lifted one finger and Lonnie closed her mouth. I watched him stop in the kitchen doorway on a Wednesday because you were on the floor barefoot, and June was in your lap and you were laughing. I watched my husband forget for 40 seconds that he is the head of a clan. I watched him become a man. Then I watched him remember who he is and walk away, and I went upstairs and sat on the edge of the tub for a long time. I want you to know what I felt, because it matters. I did not feel rage. I did not feel jealousy. I felt relief. Because for 8 years I have been waiting for a reason that would let both of us put contract down without breaking the family. Yuna reached into the small drawer under the lacquer tray and pulled out a thin manila envelope. She placed it on the tray between them. Her fingers were perfectly steady. Open it. Lonnie did not move. Open it, Lonnie. I am not testing you. I am showing you something. Lonnie lifted the envelope. The flap was loose. Inside, folded in thirds, was a thick legal document in English and Korean, with tabs and seals and a signature block at the bottom. She unfolded it enough to see the top. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Petitioner, Yuna Lee Kang. Respondent, Kang Tae Hwan. Date of preparation handwritten in the margin in small, careful script. The date was 4 months before her own start date in this house. 4 months. Lonnie read it twice, folded the document, placed it back on the tray. 16 weeks in the safe. Min Jae prepared it. Tae Hwan signed his portion the same afternoon. The only signature missing is the final witness signature, which I asked Min Jae to hold. Yuna looked at her directly. I asked him to hold because I did not know what kind of woman would walk into this house first. A woman who would survive my husband. A woman who would be eaten by him. A woman who would treat my son like a paycheck. I asked Min Jae to hold until I knew which kind had arrived. I am telling you today, Lonnie, because I know. Lonnie's throat closed. She made it open. Yuna, I do not hate you, Lonnie. I envy you. Because you still look free. You walk into a room and your shoulders are still where God put them. You speak to my son in a voice that does not perform. You looked at my husband in the hallway last week, and you simply looked at him as if he were a person. I have not been able to do that in 8 years. I forgot how. When I see you do it, I feel a kind of grief for the woman I was before this house ate her, and a kind of hope, because if you exist, then she existed too, once. A small sound came out of Lonnie that she did not plan. She caught it before it became a word. I am going to ask you one thing, and I will believe whatever you tell me. Have you slept with my husband? No, Lonnie said. The word came out level. No, Yuna, I have not. Have you kissed him? No, has he touched you? No. Yuna nodded slowly. I believe you in the library 4 nights ago, Lonnie said, because she would not let this moment hold a single shadow. He lifted his hand toward my face. He did not finish the motion. I stepped back. I told him I would not be any man's secret. I have not been alone in a room with him since. Yuna closed her eyes for a long second. When she opened them, they were wet at the edges, and she did not pretend there were not. Thank you, Lonnie. Yuna, I am going to leave the house. I am not asking you to leave. I am asking you to listen to the rest. Lonnie waited. I will sign these papers this week, not because of you, because of me. Because I have been a coward for 5 years, and I watched a barefoot woman make my son laugh, and I decided I would rather be poor and divorced and breathing than continue to wear a wedding ring as jewelry. The papers were going to be signed, Lanny, with you or without you. Do not carry guilt that does not belong to you. The marriage was over before you were hired. Lonnie's hands began to shake. She pressed them harder into her thighs, and the shaking stopped. But I am also going to ask you to leave this house today. Quietly, with a generous severance Minjai will arrange, and you will not refuse. I am asking because if you stay 1 more week, the story of what is about to happen to my family will be told as a story about a black woman who stole a Korean husband, and it is not that story. I will not let my son grow up hearing the wrong version. I will not let the press, or my mother-in-law, or the staff who gossip in the kitchen build that version around you. Lonnie breathed in through her nose and out through her mouth. And Taiwan is a man who does not know how to ask for anything. He has only ever known how to take, or to receive what is offered before he has to ask. If he wants you, he will have to learn. And he will only learn if you are not in this house when he tries. If you are here, he will reach for you from above. With money, with pressure, he will not become a man inside this house. This house was built to keep him a boy with a gun. If he is going to become someone who can love you, he has to drive out of the gate and find you, with his own legs, with his own voice, not the Kang face, his own. Lonnie nodded once. Set the teacup down. Why are you telling me all of this? Why not just hand me an envelope and a check and send me out the gate by lunch? Yuna's mouth moved into the smallest version of a smile. Because you sat on the floor with my son. Because you did not flinch when I said I am not blind. Because you said no 3 times without raising your voice. Because in another life, Lanny Hodges, I think we would have been friends. I am telling you because you have earned the truth, and because the only currency I have left in this house that has not been touched by the Kang name is the truth. They sat in silence. The gardener clipped the boxwood. June, Lonnie said, and her voice cracked on the name and she let it. You can say goodbye to him properly. Tonight. He is going to cry. I am going to let him cry. He needs to learn that people who love him sometimes have to leave for reasons that are not his fault. I would rather he learn it from you, who held him, than from his father, who only knows how to leave by closing a door. Tonight. I will say goodbye tonight. I will leave in the morning before he wakes for school, so he can hold on to the goodbye and not to my back walking out the door. That is the right choice. Lonnie stood. Her legs were steady. Yuna, thank you. Yuna looked up at her from the floor, and for the first time her composure cracked, just at the corner of her mouth, just for a half-second. Thank you for not lying to me, Lonnie Hodges. Go and finish your day with my son. Be normal with him. Read him the book about the turtle. Then come to me tonight after his bath and I will help you pack. Lonnie walked to the paper door and stopped. One more thing, I am not going to see Taewon before I leave. She did not say his name. Yuna understood. Good, if he wants to find me, he can find me. But he is going to find me as a man. Not as the head of a house, not as a husband, as Taewon. Will you tell him? Lonnie thought. Tonight. Before I sleep, I will go to the study. I will not stay. I will say my piece and I will leave the room. That is all. She opened the papered door and walked out into the hallway, with her braid heavy on her shoulder and her hands perfectly steady at her sides. She found June in the playroom on the rug with the wooden blocks, and she sat on the floor barefoot the way she always sat, and she helped him build a small house with a small door. When she said the word door, her voice did not shake. He did not notice. He was 6. He was building. That afternoon, she did 3 things slowly and on purpose. She washed and folded the small blue cardigan he wore on cool mornings and placed it on his chair. She wrote on an index card the 4 songs she sang to him at bedtime, and slid the card into the front pocket of his lesson book where he would find it Tuesday. And she sat with him through his snack and asked him to tell her the names of every fish in his aquarium book. And she repeated each name after him, and she laughed when he laughed. At 7:40, she gave him his bath. She washed his hair with the small plastic cup, and she covered his eyes with her left hand so the suds would not sting. She wrapped him in the white towel with the rabbit ears on the hood. She dressed him in the pajamas with the green dinosaurs. She read him the book about the turtle who wanted to live in a tree. She did not skip the line where the turtle says, "I am scared, but I am going anyway." When she finished, she closed the book and she put her hand on his small chest and she said, in her low, warm voice, the voice that did not perform, "June, I love you. You are a brave boy. You are a kind boy. You are a smart boy. I am going to remember you for the rest of my life." He blinked up at her. "Miss Lonnie, are you going?" She did not lie. She did not soften it. "Yes, not because of you. Never because of you. Because of grown-up reasons that have nothing to do with how much I love you. You did not do anything wrong. You did everything right. Do you hear me?" "Yes, say it back to me." "I did not do anything wrong." Again, "I did not do anything wrong." "Good boy." His face cracked and he cried. She let him cry. She held him against her chest, with her chin on the top of his head, and she let her own tears fall into his hair where he could not see them. And she rocked him the small way she had rocked him 100 times, and she sang the second of the 4 songs in a voice that was almost steady. He fell asleep with his fist closed around the gray fabric ribbon she had untied from her wrist and pressed into his hand. She kissed his forehead. She turned out the lamp. She closed the door without sound. She packed 2 bags, a canvas duffel and a small, hard case. The uniforms she folded and left on the chair because they were not hers. The books she had bought, she stacked in the duffel. The framed photograph of her grandmother she wrapped in a t-shirt. At 11:15, she walked down the long hallway to Taewon's study. The thin line of light at the bottom of the door told her he was awake. She knocked once. The voice from inside said, "Come in." She opened the door. She did not step over the threshold. She stayed in the frame with one hand on the wood. He was at his desk. White shirt, sleeves rolled to the elbow for the first time she had ever seen. No tie, no jacket. The lamp threw long shadows across the green leather. He looked up. The look on his face when he saw her was a look she would carry for a long time. It was not surprise. It was the face of a man who has been waiting for a knock and does not know yet whether the knock is the beginning or the end. "Lonnie, I am not coming in. I am leaving in the morning before the house wakes up. Yuna and I spoke today. I know about the papers. I am not staying." He stood. He did not move toward her. He had learned that at least. Taewon. It was the first time she had used his name without any title in front of it. The sound of it in the room changed the air. "I am going to say one thing, and then I am going to close this door, and you are not going to come after me tonight, or tomorrow, or next week. Do you hear me? I hear you. If one day you come to me free, come as a man, not as a patron, not as another woman's husband, not as the head of a clan. Not with a driver and a car and an envelope, as Taehwan, on your own legs, with your own voice, with nothing in your hands but the question. Do you understand me? He swallowed. I understand you, and if you come to me like that, she said, then maybe I open the door. He took a long breath. His hands were at his sides. The dragon on his neck moved 1 millimeter under his collar when he swallowed again. And if I come, he said, almost a whisper, then maybe, she said, I open the door. She held his eyes one more second. She did not soften. She did not smile. She nodded once. The small, precise nod a woman gives when she is sealing a sentence inside herself and not asking anyone else to carry it. Then she stepped back into the hallway, and she pulled the door closed between them. The latch clicked. The thin line of light at the bottom of the door did not move. He did not call her name. She walked back down the hallway in her bare feet with her braid heavy on her shoulder and the 2 bags waiting by her bed, and she lay down for the last time in the staff suite of the Kang house. And she did not sleep. She only waited, and the house around her went quiet in a way it had not been quiet in 8 years. The kind of quiet that comes into a room when something that has been carried for too long is finally set down on the floor. At 5 in the morning, she carried her bags down the back stairs. Helena Park was in the kitchen with a mug of barley tea and an envelope on the counter and eyes that were rimmed with sleep but completely awake. She did not ask any questions. She held out the envelope. Lonnie took it without opening it. Helena reached across the counter and squeezed her wrist once, hard, the way an aunt does. Go, walk straight. Do not look back at the house. The car is at the gate. Lonnie nodded. She did not trust her voice for a single word. She walked out the service door and across the gravel, and did not look back at the white marble face of the house behind her. The Blacktown car was waiting with its engine running. The driver opened the door. She placed the duffel on the seat, then the small, hard case. She got in. The gate slid open. The car pulled forward. Bel Air at dawn was lavender and gray, the eucalyptus trees still wet from the marine layer, the road empty. She did not cry in the car. She had cried in the bedroom of a 6-year-old boy the night before, and she had used up that kind of crying for the day. She watched the gate close behind her in the side mirror until the angle of the road took it out of sight, then faced forward, breathed all the way down into her belly the way her grandmother had taught her, and said one sentence to herself, out loud, low and warm. I left as myself. The car turned onto the canyon road and began the slow descent toward the city, and the morning light came up over the ridge behind her, and Lonnie Hodges rode down out of Bel Air with her shoulders exactly where God had put them. Sunday came over Bel Air polished and without sound. Black sedans at the curb, uncles in dark wool climbing the marble, aunts in pearl and beige. Min Jae Choi already on the side terrace, gray suit pressed, titanium glasses catching the noon sun, the brown leather briefcase flat against his shin. In the dining room, the long walnut table had been pulled to full length, 12 chairs, ivory linen, low arrangements of white peony and green eucalyptus. The end chairs mattered today. Madame Kang Haijin took the south end without being shown. Hanbok modernized in pale gray silk, jade brooch on her left collarbone, the gold ring with green jade catching light every time she lifted her teacup. Taewon took the north end. Black pinstripe suit, white shirt buttoned to the last button, black silk tie, the dragon tattoo hidden under the collar, the way it always was when she was in the room. Yuna sat to his right, 3 chairs down, in an ivory midi dress and a structured cream blazer, hair smooth at the shoulder, 1 small pearl in each ear. Min Jae sat to Taehwan's left. The briefcase went under his chair, upright against the leg. Helena Park moved with the soup. Cold cucumber and pine nut, the matriarch's insistence in June. The first bowl went to Haijin, the second to Taehwan. Helena's hand was steady, her eyes were not. She had served in this house long enough to read a Sunday before it spoke, and the air at this table was wrong. The uncles were too cheerful and the aunts were too quiet, and Yuna had not touched the napkin in her lap since. She sat down, Helena set the bowl down, and did not let go right away. He looked up. He nodded. She let go. Taejuan did not pick up his spoon. He pushed the bowl an inch forward, away from him the smallest possible gesture, and stood. The table did not catch it at first. An uncle near the middle was finishing a story about a cousin in Seoul. An aunt was laughing in the polite three-note way the aunts in this family laughed. Hae-jin saw it before anyone. Her teacup went down on the saucer without sound, and her chin lifted half an inch and her eyes went flat, way they did when she was about to be obeyed or about to be disobeyed, and she had not yet decided which. Sit, she said in Korean, soft. I will not be long, Taejuan said in English. He said it for the cousins who had grown up here, and the aunts who pretended they had not, and he said it because English in this house, at this table, meant the door was open and the staff could hear, and the moment could not be folded back into a private thing later. I have something to say before the meal. The uncle near the middle stopped his story. The aunt stopped her laugh. Yuna lifted her chin and her shoulders went down, not up, which was the tell Taejuan had been waiting for. She knew. She had known for a week. Minjai's hand moved once, slow, against the side of his thigh and rested. My marriage to Yuna is over. Taejuan said it flat, no apology in it, no theater in it, the same voice he used on the phone with Long Beach when a container did not clear and a man needed to understand that it was going to clear by Tuesday. We have agreed. The papers are signed. I am telling the family today out of respect, not for permission. Silence sat down on the table like a 13th guest. Then Hae-jin moved. The teacup went up again, an inch, 2 inches, and stopped, and went back down without touching her mouth. You will not, she said it in Korean. You will not bring this into my house on a Sunday. It is already in your house, mother. It has been in your house for 5 years. 5 years of what? An uncle leaned in, the one with the gold pen in his pocket, who liked to be the voice when there was a voice to be. 5 years of what, Taejuan? You have a wife. You have a son. You have a name on 3 buildings on Wilshire. What is missing? Nothing is missing, Taejuan said. Something is over. They are not the same. Hae-jin's eyes went to Yuna once, fast, the kind of look that asked a question and answered it in the same second, and then they went to Helena Park, who was still at the sideboard with the soup tureen in both hands, and Hae-jin gave the smallest tilt of the chin that meant leave. Helena did not leave. Helena set the tureen down on the warming pad and folded her hands at her apron and stayed. The matriarch noticed. The matriarch did not insist. She turned her face back to her son, and the air around her shoulders went a degree cooler. It is that girl. Hae-jin said it in English. She wanted the cousins to hear too. It is that Nanny. That is what this is. You have lost your head over a girl who carries our child up the stairs, and you are willing to tear down this family for a body. Taejuan did not flinch. He put both hands flat on the table, the gold and white watch catching the chandelier, the cufflink small and dull and expensive, and he leaned forward exactly 2 inches. Do not use her name to explain your own cowardice. He said it in Korean first low, so Hae-jin felt it in the language she had raised him in. Then he said it again in English, so the rest of the table could not pretend to have misheard. The uncle with the gold pen sat back. The aunt next to him put her hand on her own throat. Yuna closed her eyes for one full breath and opened them. My marriage was over before Lonnie Hodges entered this house. It was over before June could speak in full sentences. You have known. All of you have known. You have eaten at this table for 5 years and watched my wife sleep on the 2nd floor and me sleep on the 3rd, and you have called it tradition. You have called my silence dignity. You have called Yuna's silence grace. It was neither. It was a contract to adults signed because their parents wanted a merger, and the merger happened, and the marriage did not. I am done swallowing it. Hae-jin's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Do not bring Lonnie's name into this room again, Taejuan said. Not at this table. Not in this house. She is not the reason. She is not the excuse. She is not the wound. You are the wound. The contract was the wound. She is a woman who did her job in this house with more honor than most of you have shown the people who share your last name. You will speak of her with that respect, or you will not speak of her at all." The uncle with the gold pen tried once. "Taejuan, no." Taejuan did not raise his voice. He did not need to. "You will sit, uncle. You will listen. You have not earned the right to a sentence here today." Haijin's hand was on the jade ring, turning it, the small habit she had when she was being defied, and could not yet decide whether the defiance was a phase or a fact. Her eyes moved to Yuna. Of all the moves left at the table, the one Haijin had not planned for was the one that came next. Yuna stood. She stood the way a woman stands when she has been practicing in private for weeks. Minjai had already slid the briefcase forward with the inside of his ankle. Yuna lifted it, set it flat on the white linen between the peonies, and clicked it open. Cream-colored folder. Thick. She pulled it out, opened it to the first page, and turned it so the date was facing the south end of the table where her mother-in-law sat, with the jade ring still going around her finger. "Mother," Yuna said it in Korean, quiet, no edge in it. The edge would have been beneath her. "Read the date." Haijin did not move. "Read the date," Yuna said again, in English this time for the uncles. The uncle with the gold pen leaned in without meaning to. His eyes did the reading his mouth could not. He sat back fast. 4 months! Yuna's voice did not change pitch. "These papers were signed by me, and by Taejuan, 4 months before Lonnie Hodges was hired into this house. 4 months before any of you met her. 4 months before my son knew her name. The decision to end this marriage was made by the two of us, in private, with our attorney, before a black woman ever set foot on the marble in your foyer. So when you whisper that this is her fault, when you carry it to the temple, when you tell my son one day that a nanny broke his parents, you will be telling a lie, and I will not have my son's life begin on a lie built to protect your pride." Helena Park, at the sideboard, put one hand flat to her own chest and left it there. Haijin looked at the date. She looked at her son. She looked at her daughter-in-law of 8 years standing across from her, with a cream folder in 2 steady hands, and the small pearl earrings still catching the light, and for the first time in those 8 years, Haijin understood that Yuna had never been the soft one. Yuna had been the patient one. There was a difference, and the difference was sitting on the table in black ink. "You shame me," Haijin said. It came out smaller than she meant. "No, mother," Taejuan said it without heat. "You shamed yourself the day you decided a black woman in this house was easier to blame than your own son. I am giving you the truth so that you stop. I am not asking you to like it. I am asking you to stop." Yuna closed the folder. She set it in the center of the table, where every uncle and every aunt and every cousin could see Minjai's firm name embossed under the seal. She sat. She picked up her napkin. She unfolded it across her lap. "The soup is getting warm," she said in Korean mild. "Eat or do not eat." "I am eating." She took one slow taste of the cold cucumber soup and set the spoon down. Taejuan did not sit. He stayed standing at the north end of the table, and he looked once down its length at Yuna. And Yuna looked back, and for the first time in 8 years they were on the same side of a room. Not as a couple, as two people who had walked out of the same room at the same time and were now standing in a hallway with the door closed behind them. He tipped his head a 1/4 inch toward her. She tipped hers back the same 1/4 inch. It was the most honest thing they had ever said to each other at that table. He turned to his mother. "I will be at the house in Pasadena by the end of next month. June will spend his weeks with Yuna and his weekends with me until we agree otherwise. Minjai has the schedule. He will send it to you Tuesday. You will see your grandson. You will see him in a home where he is allowed to laugh at the table. That is the only condition I am giving you on the visits, and it is not negotiable." He set his napkin on the back of his chair unopened. "I will not eat today," he said. "Please do, Mrs. Park has worked since 5. He walked out of the dining room. The marble took his Oxford shoes the way it had taken his father's, and the door to the front hall closed behind him with the small, clean sound of brass on brass. And at the long table, the uncle with the gold pen finally picked up his spoon because Yuna was eating. And one by one, slow as a tide, the rest of the family began to eat too. Haijin did not. She sat with the jade ring under her thumb and looked at the cream folder in the center of the linen and did not look up again for a long time. 3 weeks pass the way 3 weeks pass when a man has decided to subtract something from his life on purpose. Taewon did not call. He did not write. He did not send a driver to Silver Lake to check on the small studio walk-up where Nanny had taken a room above a Salvadoran bakery. He did the harder thing. He let her be. He sold the upper floor of the Wilshire building to a cousin who had been asking for a decade. He moved 2 of the Long Beach contracts to Min Jae's name on paper and to a younger lieutenant in practice. He cut the security detail at Bel Air to none. Because there was no one left to guard, the house went on the market on a Thursday and was under offer by Saturday. He took the first clean number in cash. He put Yuna's share into a trust for June before the ink was dry. The house in Pasadena was smaller than the garage at Bel Air. Stucco the color of old paper, a clay tile roof gone soft at the edges, a black iron gate that did not lock, a jacaranda tree in the front yard that dropped purple all over the walk in June. 3 bedrooms. A kitchen with a window over the sink that looked into a back garden with a lemon tree and a rosemary hedge, and an old wooden bench the previous owner had left. He painted the second bedroom himself, pale blue, the color of a sky right after rain, a small wooden bed, a cream cotton quilt, a reading lamp with a paper shade, a bookshelf, the height of a 6-year-old with 3 books on it, and the rest of the shelves empty, so June could fill them himself. He kept the dragon tattoo. He stopped buttoning shirts to the last button. The black silk ties went into a drawer he did not open. The goatskin gloves went to a coat charity in Koreatown along with most of the suits. He kept 2. 1 charcoal, 1 black. Everything else he gave away. In Silver Lake, Lonnie had taken a position with a young couple who had twin girls almost 2. A yellow bungalow on a hill, a hammock between 2 avocado trees. Twins who ate strawberries with their hands and pulled her twist braid with sticky fingers and laughed when she pretended to be a lion. She came home tired in a good way. She slept without her phone in the room. She did not look at anything that might have his name in it. She kept the gray fabric ribbon on her left wrist. She did not take it off. On a Thursday in the 4th week, she came home, climbed the wooden stairs to the studio above the bakery, opened her mailbox out of habit because the mail was always junk, and found 1 envelope. Cream-colored, no stamp, no return address. Her name in dark ink, by hand. Just Lonnie Hodges. The handwriting was careful. The handwriting was a man who had practiced. She held the envelope in both hands all the way up the 2nd flight. She sat on the edge of her bed. She did not turn the light on. The street lamp through the window was enough. She slid her thumb under the flap and opened it. 1 sheet, heavy paper, 3 lines. I came as Taewon. No suit, no house, no name in front of mine. Does the door still exist? Underneath, an address in Koreatown. A small restaurant on Olympic she had walked past 100 times. A date Saturday. A time. 7 in the evening. No signature. He had not signed it. He had not needed to. The handwriting was the signature. She sat with the paper in her lap for a long time. She breathed once, all the way down, the same breath she had taken the morning. She walked out of Bel Air with 2 suitcases, and she folded the letter along the same crease he had, and she put it under her pillow. Saturday came. The terracotta midi dress, the flat leather sandals, the small gold hoops, the gray ribbon on her wrist. She braided her hair back loose at the nape and let the twist fall over her shoulder. She did not wear perfume. She did not need to be remembered. She needed to be seen. The restaurant was the kind of place where the menu was in Korean and the lights were low and amber, and the booths had high wooden backs that gave the conversation back to the people having it. She gave her name to the woman at the front. The woman did not ask which name. The woman walked her to a corner booth at the back. He was already there. He stood when he saw her. He did not reach for her hand. He did not say her name first. He stood and waited until she was seated, and then he sat back down across from her, and the amber lamp caught him from one side, and she saw him. Black linen shirt, soft from washing, top 2 buttons undone. The dragon visible at the side of his neck for the first time in front of her, dark ink solid up to the line of his jaw. No tie, no watch, no gloves, no cufflinks. His hands were on the table between them, fingers laced loosely, knuckles still scarred, in the small ways as the knuckles of his life had been scarred. But the hands were quiet. She looked at him for a long moment. He let her. "You took your time," she said. "I needed to arrive clean." She did not answer that right away. The woman came with 2 small cups and a clay teapot, and poured for them both hot barley tea, the smell rising between them like a small fence and then dropping. The woman left. He did not pick up his cup. He waited. "What did you leave behind?" Lonnie asked. "The house, 2 of the 3 companies, the crew at Long Beach, the watch, the gun in my desk, my mother's idea of what my life is supposed to look like. And what did you keep? My son, my word, the part of the work I can sign my name to in daylight. A small house in Pasadena, the tattoo because it is mine, and the question I have been carrying for 4 months." She picked up her tea. She did not drink yet. She held the small cup in both hands and looked at him over the rim. "Why a small house?" "Because I traded a prison for a home." He said it level. "No theater. Bel Air was a museum I lived inside. The Pasadena house has a lemon tree, a bench the old owner left, a room I painted blue for June. It is the first thing in my life that is only mine." Lonnie drank, slow, and set the cup down. "And me?" He did not look away. He did not soften. He gave her the answer he had been carrying since the night in the library, with the whiskey and the lamp, and the hand that had stopped at the height of her face. "You were the first person who made me want to knock on a door instead of order it opened." She let that sit between them. She did not rush to receive it. The amber light moved on his shirt as he breathed. The dragon on his neck moved when he swallowed. He was a man she had not seen before, and he was the same man, and both of those things were true at the same time. "Where is the house?" she said. "Pasadena. 20 minutes from here without traffic. 35 with. See it? Tonight? Tonight?" He paid for the tea they had barely touched. He helped her into the passenger side of a car she did not recognize, an older sedan, dark green, clean, the kind of car a man buys when he no longer needs anyone to be impressed by the car. He drove with both hands on the wheel and the windows cracked. The air coming in jasmine off somebody's fence on Western, and Koreatown thinned into Hancock Park, and the freeway thinned into the small surface streets of Pasadena, where the jacaranda were still dropping, purple even at night. The house was behind a low iron gate that did not lock. He pushed it open with his hand. The walk was littered with petals. The porch light was on, warm, low, a single bulb in a paper shade. He stopped at the door. He did not put his key in. "Do you want to come in?" "You're going to make me ask?" "I am going to make sure you choose." Lonnie looked at the door. She looked at him. She looked at the gray ribbon on her left wrist and at the man with the dragon on his neck and the soft linen shirt and the empty wrists and the cushion in his mouth that he had carried across 4 months and 3 weeks and 1 hand-delivered letter to put down on a porch in Pasadena. "Can I come in?" she said. "This time," he said, and his voice almost broke on the small word and did not, "Yes." He opened the door. He stood aside. Lonnie Hodges of Inglewood, 25 years old, twist braid blonde and black over her shoulder, gray ribbon on her wrist, walked into the small stucco house on a side street in Pasadena where a lemon tree was throwing its scent through the back window, and the porch light went off behind her as the door closed, soft like a sentence that had finally ended in the right place. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Have you ever stayed in a house where the silence was louder than the words, "K-fam"? Have you ever loved a man who only knew how to give orders, never how to knock? Would you have waited 3 weeks of silence to see if he'd come back as a man instead of a boss? Mark my words, K-fam, Sometimes the bravest door is the one you close before he can buy it. Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. And if you want more stories about silenced women who reclaimed their dignity, about hidden love that survives the underworld, and about Korean family secrets that explode at the dinner table, subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell. See you in the next story.